Ambassador Elena Vasquez adjusted her ceremonial uniform one final time as the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers began to open. The weight of humanity's future pressed against her shoulders like gravity from a neutron star. Behind those doors waited representatives from over 300 species, beings who had governed the galaxy for millennia before humans had even discovered fire. The chamber stretched beyond what human eyes could comfortably process. Crystalline structures jutted from impossible angles, while bioluminescent pods housed aquatic delegates. The air itself seemed alive, filled with translation nanites that would convert her words into frequencies, chemicals, and electromagnetic patterns that every species could understand. Elena had trained for this moment for 15 years. She spoke 47 languages, had studied xenobiology until she could predict behavioral patterns across dozens of species, and had memorized every treaty, trade agreement, and territorial dispute in recorded galactic history. Earth's greatest minds had prepared her for every possible scenario. Except execution. The Hierophant of the Zephyrian Collective floated at the chamber's center, its translucent body pulsing with authority. Around it, the Council of Firsts formed concentric circles based on their species' galactic influence. The Valdorian Empire's crystalline representatives gleamed like living diamonds. The Thrak hegemony's insectoid delegates clicked their mandibles in rhythmic patterns that served as their equivalent of whispered conversations. Even the energy beings of the Nexus Consortium had manifested physical forms for this occasion. Elena walked forward with measured steps, her heels echoing in the vast space. Earth had waited 2 centuries for this invitation. Humanity had proven itself through countless trials, surviving first contact with the Proximan traders, establishing peaceful relations with 12 different species, contributing technological innovations that had revolutionized faster-than-light communication, and even mediating a territorial dispute between the Keth warrior clans and the Mollusk Confederacy. Every requirement for council membership had been met. Every hoop had been jumped through. Humanity deserved their place among the galactic community. The Hierophant's voice resonated through the translation field, reaching Elena as perfectly modulated English. Human representative, you stand before the Council of Firsts as a petition for your species' inclusion in our ancient order. State your case. Elena had rehearsed this speech thousands of times. She began with humanity's achievements, their contributions to galactic stability, their technological innovations. She spoke of human art, philosophy, and their unique perspective on conflict resolution. The assembled delegates listened with what she interpreted as polite attention. When she finished, the chamber fell silent for several minutes. Different species processed information at varying rates, and courtesy demanded patience for the slowest among them. The Valdorian Prime Speaker was the first to respond, its crystalline form chiming with harmonic frequencies. The human proposal has been evaluated. We find inconsistencies. Elena's training kicked in. I would be happy to address any concerns the council might have. Humans are paradoxical, rumbled the Thrak War Speaker, its massive form shifting with agitation. You claim to be peaceful, yet your history shows constant warfare. You speak of cooperation while your own species remains divided into competing nations. With respect, honored War Speaker, humanity has grown beyond our violent past. We've established a unified world government and haven't engaged in large-scale conflict for over a century. The Mollusk Confederacy's representative undulated in what Elena recognized as their equivalent of laughter. A century? Child species, the Galactic Council has maintained peace for 12 million years. Your 100 years is not even a moment of quiet between storms. Elena felt her first flicker of concern, but pressed forward. Every species had to start somewhere. Humanity is young, but we learn quickly. Our adaptability is our strength. Adaptability, the Hierophant repeated slowly. Yes, we have observed this trait. Perhaps too closely. The massive display screens around the chamber suddenly came alive with images. Elena's breath caught as she recognized the footage. Human settlements on dozens of worlds, mining operations in asteroid belts, terraforming projects on previously uninhabitable planets. In the 2 centuries since first contact, the Hierophant continued, humanity has expanded to over 400 star systems. Your growth rate exceeds that of any species we have encountered. Elena smiled, thinking this was positive. We're explorers by nature. We seek new horizons. You consume worlds, the Nexus Consortium's energy being pulsed with angry red frequencies. Where other species might establish a single outpost, humans build cities. Where others might mine essential minerals, humans strip mine entire moons. We follow all galactic environmental protocols, Elena protested. Every human expansion has been approved by the appropriate regulatory bodies. Approved because you present compelling cases and offer beneficial trade agreements, the Valdorian Prime Speaker chimed. But the pattern is unmistakable. Humans do not settle. Humans conquer through occupation. The chamber's atmosphere was shifting. Elena could feel it in the way delegates moved, the frequencies of their communications, the electromagnetic patterns emanating from the various species. What had begun as a formal hearing was becoming something else entirely. Furthermore, the Hierophant's voice took on a colder tone. We have detected unauthorized human settlements in 17 systems. Elena's blood ran cold. That's impossible. All human expansion is carefully monitored by Earth Central Command. Impossible? Let us examine evidence. New images flashed across the screens. Ramshackle stations around rogue planets, mining operations and systems claimed by other species, and, most damning of all, heavily armed human ships with no official registration. Pirates, Elena said quickly. Every species has outcasts who operate outside legal boundaries. These, pirates, possess technology that should not exist, the Thrak war speaker growled. Weapons that can penetrate our shields. Faster-than-light drives that leave no detectable signature. Stealth capabilities that fool our best sensors. Elena's mind raced. Some of those technologies were classified Earth Defense Corps projects, theoretical research that shouldn't exist outside high-security laboratories. If unauthorized groups had access to bleeding-edge military technology, it suggested something far worse than simple piracy. I assure the Council that Earth Central Command has no knowledge of these operations. If human criminals have gained access to restricted technology, we will investigate immediately. Will you? The Hierophant's form pulsed brighter. Or will you claim ignorance while your species continues its pattern of expansion? Honored delegates, humanity seeks only peaceful coexistence. We have no desire for conflict with any Council species. Yet conflict follows humans wherever they go. The mollusk representative bubbled. The Kepler incident. The Proxima Station riots. The Tau Ceti mining dispute. Each incident mentioned had been thoroughly investigated. In every case, human involvement had been peripheral, often humanitarian. Elena had studied the reports herself. In each situation you mention, humans provided aid or mediation services. We helped resolve conflicts, not create them. Resolution through superior firepower is not mediation. The Thrak war speaker rumbled ominously. Elena felt the walls closing in. This was spiraling beyond anything she had prepared for. If the Council has concerns about human activities, surely dialogue is preferable to accusations. We can establish oversight committees, implement additional monitoring protocols. The time for oversight has passed, the Hierophant announced. The Council of Firsts has reached a decision. The chamber's lighting shifted, taking on the deep crimson that indicated formal judgment. Elena's translator nanites carried not just words but emotional undertones from dozens of species, and she was suddenly drowning in waves of fear, disgust, and finality. Humanity poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Your species' aggressive expansion, unauthorized technological development, and inability to control your own populations make you unsuitable for Council membership. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. The Council's decision is disappointing, but we respect your judgment. Humanity will continue to work toward earning your trust through our actions. You misunderstand, the Hierophant said with terrible calm. This is not a rejection of membership. This is a judgment of extinction. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Around the chamber, weapons systems that had been hidden in decorative elements began to emerge. The beautiful crystalline formations revealed themselves as massive energy cannons. The bioluminescent pods opened to show torpedo tubes. Even the flowing architectural elements transformed into targeting arrays. By unanimous decision of the Council of Firsts, the Hierophant's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Humanity is declared a clear and present danger to galactic civilization. The species known as Homo sapiens is sentenced to extinction. This sentence will be carried out immediately following the termination of their representative, as is traditional. Elena's diplomatic training crumbled before the reality of her situation. You can't be serious. Genocide? For what? Expanding too quickly? Having pirates? For being human. The Nexus Consortium's energy being pulsed with cold blue light. Your species is an anomaly. In 12 million years of galactic civilization, No species has ever demonstrated your particular combination of aggression, adaptability, and reproductive rate. You are not merely dangerous. You are impossible. Impossible. The Valdorian Prime speaker's crystalline form resonated with what Elena now recognized as fear. Every species reaches equilibrium. Population stabilizes. Expansion slows. Aggression diminishes. This is the natural order. Humans continue to grow, to expand, to fight, to adapt. You do not follow the patterns that have governed galactic civilization since its inception. Elena backed away as the weapons systems powered up, their charging cycles creating harmonics that made her bones ache. We're just young. Give us time to mature as a species. Time is what we cannot give, the Hierophant said sadly. Our xenobiological models predict that if left unchecked, humanity will consume the entire galaxy within 10,000 years. Not through malice, but through sheer biological imperative. You cannot help what you are, but we cannot allow what you will become. The energy weapons reached full charge. Elena could feel the static electricity building in the air, see the way light itself began to bend around the focusing crystals. My death changes nothing, she said with as much dignity as she could muster. Earth will know what happened here. Earth will burn before your transmission reaches them. The Thrak war speaker clicked with satisfaction. Our fleets are already moving. By the time your homeworld realizes the Council's decision, their orbital defenses will be ash and their cities will be craters. Elena thought of her daughter taking her first steps, her husband's smile when she'd been selected for this mission, her mother's pride at the farewell ceremony. She thought of 8 billion humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their species had just been condemned to extinction by beings they'd tried so hard to befriend. Any final words? The Hierophant asked with what might have been genuine sympathy. Elena straightened her uniform one last time. Tell your fleets to bring everything they have. They're going to need it. The energy beams converged on her position with the combined power of a small star. For a brief moment, Elena Vasquez existed as pure energy, her consciousness scattered across quantum frequencies before finally dissolving into the cosmic background radiation. The Council of Firsts observed a moment of ceremonial silence for the terminated Envoy, as tradition demanded. Then, they turned their attention to the holographic displays showing their assembled fleets moving toward human space. Deploy the first wave to Earth's primary defensive installations, the Hierophant commanded. The Valdorian crystal ships will target their orbital platforms. Thrak battle cruisers will handle surface bombardment. Mollusk bioships will neutralize their space-based population centers. What of human colonies? The Nexus Consortium asked. Simultaneous strikes on all major settlements. We cannot allow any significant population to escape and rebuild elsewhere. This must be absolute. The tactical displays showed over 10,000 Council ships moving toward human space from 50 different vectors. It was the largest military operation in galactic history, designed to eliminate an entire species in a coordinated strike. Fleet Admiral Zektar reports ready for primary assault, the Thrak war speaker announced. Human defensive installations appear nominal. No sign they've detected our approach. Excellent. The Hierophant pulsed with satisfaction. Begin the extinction protocol. May this dark necessity never be required again. The first Council ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, their sensors immediately locking onto Earth's orbital defense platforms. Massive crystalline dreadnoughts powered their primary weapons while swarms of smaller ships moved to establish bombardment positions. Admiral Zektar studied the tactical displays with professional satisfaction. Human defenses were exactly as intelligence had predicted, impressive by primitive standards, laughably inadequate against a force this size. Their orbital stations mounted decent particle beam arrays and nuclear missile pods, but nothing that could penetrate advanced Council shielding. Begin with the outer defense ring. He clicked to his fleet commanders. Standard suppression pattern. Minimal damage to planetary infrastructure initially. We'll want to study their technology before final sterilization. The first energy beams lanced out toward the human defensive platforms, brilliant streams of coherent light designed to overwhelm their shields and reduce their weapons to molten metal. The beams struck nothing. Admiral Zektar's mandibles clicked in confusion as his sensors reported impossible readings. The human defensive platforms had simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone, as if they had never existed. Scan malfunction, he growled. Recalibrate and target manually. But the new scans showed the same thing. Where human orbital defenses had been moments before, Space was empty except for slowly expanding clouds of metallic debris. Sir, his sensor operator's voice carried notes of confusion and fear. The defensive platforms appear to have evacuated. Evacuated? They're space stations, not ships. Before Admiral Zektar could process this information further, proximity alarms began screaming throughout his fleet. Ships that had been empty space moments before materialized around the Council forces, not approaching from interplanetary distances, but appearing directly within weapons range. These weren't the crude orbital platforms they had expected to face. These were sleek vessels unlike anything in Council databases, their hulls seeming to absorb light itself. No energy signatures, no thermal emissions, no electromagnetic radiation. They were visible only as absences in space, dark shapes outlined against the stars. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves. Admiral Zektar transmitted on all frequencies. The response came not as radio transmission, but as text appearing directly on his command screens, bypassing every security protocol the Thrak had developed over millions of years. This is Earth Defense Corps Deep Recon Fleet Alpha. You have committed an act of war against humanity. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Admiral Zektar's carapace bristled with indignation. Surrender? Do these primitives not understand the size of our force? His tactical officer was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. Sir, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. Whatever those ships are using for propulsion, it's warping spacetime itself. Impossible. Humans don't have that technology. Sir, they're requesting our surrender again. Admiral Zektar clicked his mandibles in the Thrak equivalent of laughter. Tell them they face the combined might of the Galactic Council. If they do not withdraw immediately, they will be reduced to constituent atoms. The response appeared instantly. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was executed 37 minutes ago. Galactic Council fleets are currently approaching all human colonies with intent to commit genocide. These acts constitute clear and present danger to human survival. Annihilation Protocol is now active. You have 10 seconds to surrender. Admiral Zektar had never heard of any Annihilation Protocol, but human bluffing was a well-documented behavior. Open fire on all human vessels. Maximum intensity. The Council fleet unleashed everything it had. Energy beams that could crack continents, antimatter torpedoes that could vaporize cities, gravity bombs that could collapse asteroids into black holes. All of it focused on the mysterious human ships. Every shot passed harmlessly through empty space. The human vessels hadn't moved, hadn't activated shields, hadn't taken evasive action. They had simply stopped existing in the dimensions where the Council's weapons operated. Admiral Zektar stared at his tactical displays in horror as the impossible truth sank in. These weren't ships using advanced technology. They were something entirely outside his understanding of what technology could accomplish. 10 seconds have elapsed, appeared on his screen. The first human ship fired a single weapon, a brief pulse of something that registered on no sensor known to Council science. It struck Admiral Zektar's flagship, the mighty dreadnought Thrak Ascendant, and simply erased it from existence. Not destroyed, not vaporized, deleted from reality so completely that even the quantum foam where it had been was left smoothed and empty. Across the Council fleet, similar pulses reached out with surgical precision. Each shot removed one ship so thoroughly that space itself forgot they had ever existed. In less than 30 seconds, a force of 3,000 vessels was reduced to empty vacuum. The few surviving ships that had been outside the immediate engagement zone watched in paralyzed terror as the human vessels turned their attention to the approaching Council fleets throughout the galaxy. Through quantum communication links, reports flooded in from every theater of operation. Human colonies that had appeared defenseless were revealing hidden fleets. Civilian, human ships were transforming into vessels of impossible capability. Entire Council armadas were being erased from existence with weapons that operated outside known physics. But most terrifying of all were the reports from the deep monitoring stations. Human ships were not just defending their territory. They were appearing in Council space itself, around the homeworlds of every species that had voted for genocide. In the span of 1 hour, the greatest military force in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors desperately transmitting surrender requests to an enemy that seemed capable of rewriting the laws of physics at will. On Earth, in a bunker hidden beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, General Sarah Chun stared at the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. Around her, technicians monitored quantum communication links carrying surrender transmissions from across the galaxy. Phase 1 complete, General, reported her operations officer. Council fleets have been neutralized. Human colonies are secure. Casualties on our side. 0 ships lost. 17 crew members injured during rapid deployment sequences. Chen nodded. The Annihilation Protocol had been humanity's deepest secret, developed in parallel with their public diplomatic efforts. While Elena Vasquez had trained to make peace with the galaxy, Earth's greatest scientists and engineers had prepared for the possibility that peace would be impossible. They had studied every council species, analyzed their technology, mapped their psychology, and prepared countermeasures for scenarios ranging from economic warfare to total extinction attempts. The protocol represented 2 centuries of human paranoia, ingenuity, and determination to survive regardless of the odds. What's the status on council leadership? Phase 2 teams are in position around all primary homeworlds, awaiting your authorization to proceed. Chen looked at the quantum communication display showing desperate surrender transmissions from hundreds of species. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same council that had condemned humanity for being too aggressive was now begging for mercy from the species they had tried to exterminate. Open a channel to all council worlds. Let's see if they're ready to negotiate. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in circumstances none of its members had ever imagined possible. For the first time in 12 million years, they were not the supreme authority in the galaxy. For the first time since the founding of galactic civilization, they faced an enemy they could not understand, could not defeat, and could not escape. The once magnificent council chambers bore the scars of desperate fortification. Energy barriers flickered across doorways. Automated defense systems tracked every movement. The representatives themselves huddled in protective enclosures, their usual posturing replaced by barely controlled terror. They had received General Chen's transmission 6 hours ago. Its contents had shattered every assumption about human capabilities and intentions. To the Galactic Council, you have chosen to interpret humanity's growth as a threat requiring genocide. You have executed our ambassador and launched unprovoked attacks against our civilian populations. The Annihilation Protocol is now active. You have 48 hours to provide acceptable terms for surrender, or we will demonstrate why we earned our reputation as the galaxy's most dangerous species. The Hierophant's crystalline form had dimmed to barely visible levels, its usual authority replaced by something approaching panic. Around the chamber, representatives from 300 species whispered, clicked, bubbled, and pulsed in frequencies that translated as pure fear. Status report. The Hierophant managed a project. Admiral Kothvar of the Valdorian Empire was the first to respond, his crystalline structure flickering with damaged harmonics. All primary fleets eliminated. The human weapons operate outside standard physics. Our ships don't register destruction. They simply cease to exist. Confirmed across all fronts. Added Warspeaker Grixtau of the Thrak hegemony. Preliminary estimates suggest 97% of Council naval forces have been removed from service. Remaining ships report complete weapons ineffectiveness against human vessels. The Mollusk Confederacy's representative undulated with distress. Our bioships attempted to adapt to human weapon frequencies. The adaptation process itself was deleted. The ships forgot how to exist. This is impossible, declared the energy being representing the Nexus Consortium. No technology can simply erase matter from reality. It violates fundamental conservation laws. Clearly, our understanding of fundamental laws was incomplete, the Hierophant said bitterly. Intelligence reports, please. The Council's chief xenobiologist, a spidery creature from the Academic Coalition, skittered forward on multiple legs. Our analysis suggests the humans have been developing this technology for at least 2 centuries. The civilian expansion we observed was actually a massive research and development operation. Explain. Every human colony included components we interpreted as standard infrastructure. Mining operations, manufacturing facilities, research stations. In reality, they were building the most sophisticated weapons development network ever conceived. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing human settlements across the galaxy. The innocent-looking installations now revealed their true nature. Quantum physics laboratories, dimensional engineering facilities, weapons testing ranges, and manufacturing centers for technologies that shouldn't exist. The humans didn't just settle 400 star systems, the xenobiologist continued. They turned 400 star systems into one massive weapons laboratory. Every colony was simultaneously conducting independent research while sharing data through quantum communication networks. How did we not detect this? Because they made sure we didn't want to, the creature replied. Human psychology includes sophisticated deception capabilities. They presented us with exactly what we expected to see. A young species struggling with expansion challenges, occasional criminal elements, diplomatic overtures. Meanwhile, they were analyzing our technology, our tactics, our weaknesses. The Valdorian admiral's structure chimed with horrified realization. The incidents. The Kepler station explosion, the Proxima riots, the Tau Ceti mining disputes. We attributed them to human inexperience. Test scenarios, the xenobiologist confirmed. The humans were studying our response times, our tactical doctrines, our weapon capabilities. Every accident involving humans was actually intelligence gathering. They were preparing for war while offering us friendship, the Thrak war speaker growled. Typical human duplicity. Not duplicity, the Hierophant corrected sadly. Survival preparation. They knew what we would eventually conclude about their expansion patterns. They prepared for our response. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of human planning became clear. While the Council had seen aggressive expansion, humans had been conducting the most sophisticated intelligence operation in galactic history. While the Council had debated their threat level, humans had been developing weapons capable of erasing fleets from existence. What do we know about this Annihilation protocol? The xenobiologist activated new displays showing intercepted human communications. References appear in encrypted transmissions dating back to their first contact with galactic civilization. Key phrases include existential threat response, species survival contingency, and total warfare authorization. They've been planning our destruction for 2 centuries. They've been planning to survive our destruction attempts for 2 centuries, the creature corrected. There's a significant difference. The protocol appears to be purely defensive in original conception, a response to genocide attempts. The energy being from the Nexus Consortium pulsed with angry frequencies. How is erasing our fleets from existence defensive? Because they're not targeting civilians, the xenobiologist explained. Analysis of the attacks shows surgical precision. Military vessels, weapons installations, and strategic infrastructure have been eliminated. Population centers, civilian ships, and non-military installations remain untouched. This was true, and it made the situation even more terrifying. The humans possessed weapons capable of erasing matter from reality, but they were using them with restraint. They could have eliminated entire planets, but chose only to neutralize military threats. They're demonstrating capability while minimizing casualties, the Hierophant realized. They want us to understand what they could do, not necessarily what they will do. Status of human forces? Admiral Kothvar accessed his tactical displays with trembling manipulator arms. Unknown. We can detect human ships only when they choose to be detected. Our sensors register their presence as absences, empty spaces where ships should be. How many vessels do they have? Conservative estimates suggest at least 50,000, possibly more. Their industrial capacity appears to have been hidden as thoroughly as their weapons development. The numbers were staggering. In the space of hours, humanity had revealed a fleet larger than the entire Council Navy, equipped with technology that operated outside known physics, staffed by personnel who had trained for centuries to fight this exact war. We never had a chance, the mollusk representative bubbled sadly. From the moment we decided to eliminate them, we were already defeated. Not defeated, the Hierophant corrected. Outmaneuvered. The humans have spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment, while we spent the same time convinced of our own superiority. A new communication request appeared on the central displays. General Chen's image materialized in the chamber's center, her expression calm and professional despite having just orchestrated the greatest military victory in galactic history. Honorable delegates, she began without preamble. I trust you've had time to evaluate your situation. General Chen, the Hierophant managed. We are prepared to discuss terms. Excellent. Before we begin, let me clarify something important. The Annihilation Protocol was designed specifically as a response to attempted genocide. It exists solely to ensure human survival when faced with existential threats. Are you saying you don't intend to conquer the galaxy? Chen's expression showed what might have been amusement. Conquer? Honored Hierophant, why would we want to rule a galaxy full of species that fear us? That's not conquest. That's a permanent headache. Around the chamber, delegates exchanged confused communications. This wasn't the behavior they expected from a victorious military force. Then, what do you want? The Thrak war speaker demanded. Peace, Chen replied simply. The same thing Ambassador Vasquez wanted when she stood in that chamber. The same thing every human diplomatic mission has wanted for 2 centuries. Peace? After demonstrating weapons that can erase fleets from existence. The weapons exist because peace failed, Chen explained patiently. When diplomacy works, weapons stay hidden. When diplomacy fails, and someone tries to commit genocide, weapons reveal themselves. This is a simple equation. The Valdorian admiral's structure chimed with disbelief. You developed reality erasure technology just for defense. We developed reality erasure technology because we studied your species' histories and concluded that eventually someone would try to eliminate us, Chen corrected. The Keth purification wars. The mollusk expansion conflicts. The Great Thrak unification. Every major galactic power has a history of eliminating species they considered threats. The reminder hit the chamber like a physical blow. Each species mentioned had indeed conducted genocidal campaigns against perceived threats. It was ancient history, but history nonetheless. We learned from your examples, Chen continued. We saw what happened to species that couldn't defend themselves against galactic powers. We decided that wouldn't be humanity's fate. So you built weapons to threaten us? We built weapons to survive you, she said firmly. There's a difference. If you hadn't tried to commit genocide, these weapons would have remained hidden. If you had accepted our diplomatic overtures, they would have stayed secret forever. The Hierophant processed this information slowly. Are you saying the protocol activates only in response to genocide attempts? Correct. Humanity has no interest in galactic conquest. We have no desire to rule other species or eliminate potential competitors. We just refuse to be eliminated ourselves. What happens now? The energy being asked. Chen's expression became more serious. That depends on your choices. The Annihilation protocol has 3 phases. Phase 1 eliminated your military capability. Phase 2 involves occupation of your homeworlds to ensure compliance with whatever agreement we reach. Phase 3. She paused significantly. Phase 3 involves permanent solutions to permanent problems. The implications were clear. The humans were offering one chance for negotiated peace. If the Council rejected it, humanity would ensure the threat never arose again. What are your terms? The Hierophant asked quietly. Simple. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity's right to exist. All hostile actions against human populations cease immediately. Human colonies and expansion continue under existing protocols. And the Council establishes formal diplomatic relations with Earth Central Command. That's surprisingly reasonable, the mollusk representative bubbled. We told you, we want peace. We never wanted war. The Thrak war speaker's mandibles clicked aggressively. And if we refuse? Then, Phase 3 activates, and the galaxy gets a demonstration of what human weapons can do to planets instead of ships, Chen replied without emotion. I should mention that our deep reconnaissance teams are currently positioned around every Council homeworld. Not to threaten you, but to ensure you understand the scope of your decision. The chamber's displays suddenly showed new images, human ships materializing in orbit around Valdoria Prime, Thrak Major, the mollusk spawning worlds, and hundreds of other planets. Each vessel was clearly visible despite their stealth capabilities, a deliberate demonstration of presence. Impressive positioning, Admiral Kothvar admitted grudgingly. When did those ships arrive? 6 months ago, Chen replied casually. We've been monitoring your deliberations about humanity's threat level for quite some time. The Annihilation Protocol doesn't activate on the day war begins. It activates when war becomes inevitable. The full scope of human preparation was becoming clear. They hadn't just developed weapons and fleets. They had positioned forces around every potential enemy before the conflict even began. They had been ready for this war before the Council had even decided to fight it. You've been spying on the Council? The Nexus Consortium representative demanded. We've been preparing for survival, Chen corrected. When someone is debating whether to commit genocide against your species, monitoring that debate becomes a moral imperative. For how long? Since our first diplomatic contact. Every human envoy, every trade mission, every cultural exchange has included intelligence-gathering components. We needed to understand your capabilities, your intentions, your likely responses to human expansion. The xenobiologist skittered forward nervously. Our classified deliberations, our security protocols, were adequate against conventional espionage, Chen acknowledged. Unfortunately for you, humans don't engage in conventional espionage. We engage in survival research. She gestured, and new displays showed the scope of human intelligence penetration, communication intercepts, behavioral analysis, psychological profiles, tactical assessments. The humans hadn't just been watching the council. They had been studying them with scientific precision. Every species in this chamber has been analyzed down to individual behavioral patterns, Shin continued. We know your tactical doctrines, your technological capabilities, your psychological vulnerabilities. We know which species would advocate for genocide, which would oppose it, and which would remain neutral. Impossible. Our security. Your security was designed to stop other council species from spying on you. It was never designed to stop humans, because you never considered humans a serious espionage threat. The Hierophant's form dimmed further. Show us. Shin nodded, and the displays filled with impossibly detailed intelligence reports. Personal psychological profiles of every major council leader. Complete tactical analyses of every species' military doctrine. Detailed assessments of technological capabilities and limitations. Economic projections showing how each species would respond to different types of pressure. Most disturbing of all were the predictions, documents dating back decades that accurately forecast the Council's decision to attempt genocide, the timing of their attacks, and even the specific arguments that would be used to justify their actions. You predicted our decision to eliminate you, the Hierophant said in wonderment. We predicted the inevitable result of our expansion patterns intersecting with your species' historical behaviors, Shin clarified. Genocide attempts against rapidly expanding species are a documented pattern in galactic history. We simply prepared for that pattern to repeat itself. And if we had chosen differently, then these preparations would have remained secret, and humanity would have continued seeking peaceful coexistence, Shin replied. The Annihilation Protocol exists only as a last resort. We would much prefer never to use it. The chamber fell silent as the delegates absorbed the implications. The humans had outmaneuvered them completely, not through superior aggression, but through superior preparation. While the Council had debated humanity's threat level, humans had already planned for every possible outcome of that debate. Your terms again? The Hierophant asked. Recognition of humanity's right to exist. Cessation of hostile actions. Formal diplomatic relations. And one additional requirement, which is full disclosure of any future discussions regarding actions against human populations, Shin said firmly. We will not be surprised by genocide attempts again. You want to monitor our private deliberations? We want to ensure our survival doesn't depend on your good intentions, she replied. Trust is earned, not assumed. The Thrak war speaker shifted angrily. This is humiliation, not negotiation. This is survival insurance, Shin corrected. The alternative is Phase 3. And what exactly is Phase 3? The energy being demanded. Shin's expression became coldly professional. Total sterilization of any species that poses an ongoing existential threat to humanity. Not occupation, not conquest, elimination. Complete and permanent. You would commit genocide yourselves? We would ensure our species' survival by any means necessary, she replied without hesitation. The Annihilation Protocol exists because we refuse to trust our continued existence to the goodwill of species that have already demonstrated their willingness to attempt genocide. The horrible logic was inescapable. The Council had proven they were willing to eliminate humanity. Now humanity was demonstrating their willingness and ability to eliminate anyone who threatened them. How do we know you won't simply eliminate us anyway once you have what you want? The mollusk representative asked. Because elimination serves no purpose if threats have been neutralized, Shin explained. Dead species can't trade, can't share technology, can't contribute to galactic civilization. We prefer living neighbors to dead ones, but we refuse to become dead neighbors to living ones. The Valdorian admiral's structure chimed thoughtfully. You're offering coexistence contingent on non-aggression. Exactly. The same arrangement every other species enjoys. The only difference is that we've demonstrated our ability to enforce that arrangement. And if someone violates it, then they discover what Phase 3 looks like, Shin said simply. The message was clear. Humanity was offering peace, but they were backing that offer with the most sophisticated weapons ever developed. Cross them, and species would simply stop existing. We need time to consider, the Hierophant said. You have 6 hours, Shin replied. After that, we assume you've chosen Phase 3 and proceed accordingly. Her image vanished, leaving the Council to contemplate their impossible situation. They could accept human terms and acknowledge their new position as a secondary power in the galaxy, or they could face annihilation by weapons they couldn't understand, couldn't defeat, and couldn't escape. For the first time in 12 million years, The Galactic Council was no longer the supreme authority in their domain. That distinction now belonged to a species they had tried to eliminate for being too dangerous to survive. The irony was almost perfect in its completeness. The Treaty of Seoul was signed exactly 5 hours and 58 minutes after General Chin's ultimatum. The Galactic Council, faced with the choice between diplomatic humiliation and species extinction, chose survival. The ceremony took place in the same chamber where Ambassador Elena Vasquez had been executed, a location humanity had specifically requested for symbolic reasons. The treaty itself was unlike any document in galactic history. Where previous agreements between species had been complex affairs involving trade rights, territorial boundaries, and technological exchanges, the Treaty of Seoul was brutally simple. Article 1. The Galactic Council formally recognizes humanity's right to exist and expand within galactic space. Article 2. All hostile actions against human populations are permanently prohibited. Article 3. The Council will establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth Central Command. Article 4. All Council deliberations regarding humanity will be transparently shared with human representatives. Article 5. Violation of any treaty provision activates humanity's Annihilation Protocol. The signing was attended by representatives from every major galactic power, though the atmosphere could hardly be described as celebratory. The assembled delegates moved through the ceremony with the mechanical precision of beings who understood they were acknowledging their own diminished status. General Chun herself attended via quantum hologram, flanked by images of humanity's new diplomatic corps, individuals who carried themselves with the quiet confidence of species that no longer needed to fear extinction. Among them stood Admiral Sarah Park, the architect of the deep reconnaissance networks that had placed human forces around every Council homeworld months before the war began. The Hierophant performed the ceremonial ratification with movements that spoke of resignation rather than celebration. The Council of Firsts formally accepts the terms outlined in the Treaty of Seoul. May this agreement bring lasting peace to the galaxy. Peace through strength, General Chun replied, the human motto carrying weight it had never possessed before. We look forward to constructive relations with all Council species. But the real ceremony was taking place in the spaces between words, in the careful diplomatic language that acknowledged new realities without explicitly stating them. The Galactic Council was no longer the supreme authority in galactic affairs. That distinction now belonged to humanity. The treaty was not an agreement between equals, but terms of surrender dressed in diplomatic language. 3 months after the signing, the galaxy began to adjust to its new reality. Human expansion, which had been a source of Council concern for decades, accelerated dramatically. But the pattern was different now. Where previously humans had established colonies through careful negotiations and extensive bureaucratic processes, they now simply announced their intentions and proceeded. The Council species could object, but they could no longer prevent human settlement of any system humanity chose to occupy. More concerning for many Council species was the nature of human expansion. The colonies established after the Treaty of Seoul were not the mining operations and agricultural settlements that had characterized previous human expansion. These were fortress worlds, each one containing enough military infrastructure to serve as a regional command center for human forces. Dr. Zalthek, the Valdorian Empire's chief strategic analyst, studied the reports from his crystalline chambers with growing unease. The humans were not just expanding, they were establishing an empire, though they refused to call it by that name. They're systematically positioning themselves to control every major trade route in the galaxy, he reported to the Imperial Council. Each new colony is located at a strategic choke point. Within 5 years, no significant commerce will move through galactic space without human oversight. Can we prevent this? Asked Prime Crystal Vortalic. Legally, their expansion complies with all existing territorial agreements. They file proper notifications, respect existing claims, and establish settlements only on unoccupied worlds. And practically, Dr. Zalthek's crystalline structure dimmed significantly. Any attempt to interfere with human expansion would constitute a hostile action under the Treaty of Seoul. The Annihilation Protocol remains active. This was the new reality throughout Council space. Humanity was systematically establishing the infrastructure for galactic dominance, and no one could stop them. The Treaty of Seoul had been designed to ensure human survival, but its practical effect was to enable human supremacy. The psychological impact on Council species was perhaps more significant than the strategic implications. For 12 million years, The galaxy had been governed by consensus among established powers. Conflicts were resolved through debate, negotiation, and occasionally limited warfare between roughly equal forces. The concept of a species possessing unassailable military superiority was alien to galactic political thought. Now, every major decision required consideration of human reactions. Trade agreements needed human approval. Territorial disputes required human mediation. Even internal council deliberations were conducted with the knowledge that human observers were monitoring every word. The Thrak hegemony's war speaker Grixtal exemplified the psychological adjustment many species were struggling to make. Once a proud military commander accustomed to backing diplomacy with the threat of force, he now found himself carefully weighing every statement for potential human objections. "We used to be apex predators," he confided to his aide during a private moment. "Now we're prey animals, constantly scanning for threats we cannot fight." The aide, a younger Thrak who had grown up during the human expansion period, offered a different perspective. "Perhaps we were always prey animals, war speaker. We simply didn't realize it until actual predators arrived." This generational divide was becoming apparent across council space. Older individuals remembered the time before human contact and struggled to adapt to reduced circumstances. Younger beings, who had never known galactic civilization without human presence, were more accepting of the new order. Some even argued it was an improvement. Zexira, a young mollusk philosopher, had gained considerable attention throughout council space with her controversial writings about human supremacy. "For 12 million years, we maintained peace through the balance of terror. Each species possessed enough military power to damage others, so none dared initiate major conflicts. But this was not true peace, merely delayed warfare. The humans have achieved what we never could: absolute peace through absolute superiority. No species can threaten any other without facing human retaliation, so no species attempts aggression." Her arguments were persuasive to many younger beings who had grown tired of the Council's slow, consensus-based decision-making process. Under human oversight, galactic governance had become remarkably efficient. Disputes were resolved quickly, trade flowed smoothly, and conflicts were prevented rather than mediated after the fact. But efficiency came at the cost of autonomy, and many species struggled with their reduced independence. 6 months after the Treaty of Seoul, the first major test of the new order arrived in the form of the Keth border crisis. The Keth warrior clans had been expanding into territory claimed by the Sephari Federation, a minor council species known for their advanced biotechnology. Under the old system, such disputes would have required months of deliberation, testimony from both sides, and eventually a council ruling that might or might not be enforceable. Under the new system, the Sephari Federation appealed directly to Earth Central Command. General Chin's response was swift and unambiguous. Human ships appeared in the disputed systems within hours, establishing what they termed peacekeeping zones around all contested worlds. The message to both sides was clear: hostilities would not be tolerated. The Keth war chief, a massive warrior named Thokrael who had never retreated from any conflict in his 50-year military career, found himself faced with an impossible choice. He could order his fleets to attack the Sephari as originally planned and face immediate annihilation by human forces, or he could accept human arbitration and acknowledge Keth's subservience to human authority. The choice was no choice at all. "We accept human mediation," he announced through gritted fangs, the admission of weakness almost physically painful for a warrior of his standing. The subsequent negotiation was a masterclass in efficient conflict resolution. Human arbitrators studied both sides' claims, evaluated the evidence, and reached a decision within days rather than months. The Keth were granted settlement rights on 3 of the disputed worlds in exchange for providing security services for Sephari trade routes. Both sides received something valuable while avoiding the devastating warfare that had characterized such disputes in the past. The resolution was so successful that within weeks, other species were requesting human mediation for their own conflicts. What began as crisis management evolved into systematic governance, with humanity serving as the ultimate arbiter for an increasingly wide range of galactic disputes. Dr. Elena Vasquez, daughter of the executed ambassador, had grown up watching her mother prepare for the diplomatic mission that had cost her life. Now, at 35, she served as Earth's chief diplomatic coordinator, overseeing the galaxy-wide network of human mediators and administrators that had evolved from her mother's sacrifice. Mother believed in peaceful coexistence, she reflected during a private interview with Galactic News Services. She would have been horrified by the violence that followed her death, but I think she would approve of the peace we've achieved. Even though it's enforced by threat of annihilation, Elena's smile was sad but resolute. Mother also believed in human survival. She would understand that sometimes peace requires strength to maintain it. The interview touched on the fundamental question that many species were grappling with. Was human-enforced peace genuine peace, or merely suppressed conflict? The answer seemed to depend on perspective and generational outlook. Older beings who remembered independent galactic governance often viewed human oversight as occupation disguised as peacekeeping. Younger individuals who had never known anything but human-mediated stability saw it as the natural order. But perhaps the most telling indicator of the new system's success was the evidence rather than the opinions. Galactic commerce had increased by 47% in the 6 months following the Treaty of Sol. Interspecies conflicts had dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history. Technological exchange was flourishing as species no longer hoarded advances for military advantage. Even exploration and colonization had accelerated, with human-backed expeditions pushing into previously uncharted regions of the galaxy. The galaxy was more peaceful, more prosperous, and more unified than it had ever been in 12 million years of council governance. The price of this golden age was autonomy. Every major decision flowed through human oversight. Every significant policy required human approval. Every potential conflict faced immediate human intervention. The Galactic Council still met, still debated, still passed resolutions. But everyone understood that their authority existed only as long as humans chose to respect it. The moment human interests diverged from council decisions, human authority would supersede council deliberations. This reality was demonstrated with uncomfortable clarity during the Mineral Rights Reformation, when the council voted to restrict mining operations in certain environmentally sensitive systems. Humanity, whose expansion required continued access to rare minerals, simply announced that the restrictions would not apply to human operations. The council had no recourse. They could protest, they could condemn, they could pass additional resolutions, but they could not enforce their will against human opposition. We are no longer governing the galaxy, the Hierophant admitted during a closed session that humans monitored anyway. We are administering it under human supervision. The statement was bitter but accurate. The council had become a bureaucratic organization that handled routine matters while humans made the important decisions. Yet for all their reduced circumstances, most council species were adapting to their new situation with remarkable pragmatism. The alternative, resistance that would trigger the Annihilation Protocol, was simply too terrible to contemplate. Some species even thrived under human oversight. The Mollusk Confederacy, whose biotechnology complemented human engineering capabilities, found themselves elevated to preferred trading partner status. The Academic Coalition, whose research institutions proved valuable to human scientific advancement, received increased funding and access to previously classified human technologies. The galaxy was learning to work with human supremacy rather than against it. A year after the Treaty of Sol, Ambassador Elena Vasquez's memorial was dedicated in the rebuilt council chambers. The ceremony was attended by representatives from every galactic species, including General Chun herself, who had traveled from Earth to participate in person. The memorial was a simple crystal structure that displayed rotating images of Elena's life, her childhood on Earth, her diplomatic training, her final moments before the council. But the inscription beneath it carried a message that resonated throughout galactic space. Elena Vasquez believed in peace through understanding. Her death taught us that understanding must be backed by strength. Her sacrifice ensured humanity's survival and the galaxy's future. May her memory remind us that peace is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. General Chun placed a single white flower at the memorial's base, the Earth tradition seeming strangely appropriate in the alien chamber. Your mother's dream of peaceful coexistence came true, she said quietly to Elena Vasquez's daughter, who had attended the ceremony. It just took a different form than she imagined. Do you think she would approve of what humanity has become? The younger Elena asked. Chun considered the question carefully. Your mother believed in human survival and galactic peace. We've achieved both. The methods might not be what she envisioned, but the results honor her memory. Around them, the representatives of 300 species stood in respectful silence. Many of them had been present the day Elena Vasquez was executed. All of them understood that her death had fundamentally altered the course of galactic civilization. The execution of one human diplomat had revealed the existence of humanity's greatest secret, that they had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this scenario. The Annihilation Protocol hadn't been developed in response to Council aggression. It had been waiting for it. Now, 12 months after the brief war that had reshaped the galaxy, the results of that preparation were visible everywhere. Human ships patrolled every major system. Human administrators oversaw interspecies disputes. Human approval was required for any significant policy change. The galaxy had never been more peaceful. The galaxy had never been less free. But, as young beings across hundreds of worlds were learning in their schools, freedom and peace were not always compatible. Sometimes, survival required choosing one over the other. Humanity had made that choice 2 centuries earlier, and their preparation had ensured that when the moment came to implement it, they had been ready. The Galactic Council had executed humanity's envoy believing they were eliminating a threat to galactic stability. Instead, they had activated humanity's answer to galactic extinction. The galaxy would never be the same. In a private moment after the memorial ceremony, General Chun stood alone in the chamber where everything had begun. The spot where Elena Vasquez had been executed was marked only by a small plaque, but it had become the most important location in galactic history. "We kept our promise," Chen said quietly to the empty air. "Humanity survives. The galaxy is at peace. Your sacrifice meant something." Around her, the chamber hummed with the quiet efficiency of human-administered galactic governance. Reports flowed in from hundreds of systems where human arbitrators were resolving disputes that might once have led to wars. Trade agreements were being finalized under human oversight that would bring prosperity to billions of beings. Exploration missions backed by human military support were pushing the boundaries of known space. The galaxy was thriving under human guidance, but Chen sometimes wondered what Elena Vasquez would think of the methods used to achieve her dreams of peace. Then, she remembered the woman who had walked calmly to her execution rather than abandon her mission of peaceful contact. Elena Vasquez had been willing to die for her beliefs, but she had also been human. And humans, above all else, were survivors. Peace through strength wasn't Elena's preferred method, but it was peace nonetheless. And, in a galaxy that had just tried to commit genocide against her species, Chen thought Elena would understand the necessity of ensuring that such an attempt could never succeed again. The memorial crystal caught the chamber's artificial light, refracting it into patterns that seemed to dance across the walls. For just a moment, Chen could almost imagine Elena's presence in those shifting lights, approving of the peace that had been built on the foundation of her sacrifice. The Galactic Council had learned too late that executing humanity's envoy hadn't eliminated their threat. It had awakened it.